So we have the co-inventor of blockchain here. Can you stand up? Yeah, here, bow, bow, bow. Yeah, we have, is Evan here? Evan? Yeah, stand up. We have the first engineer of Twitter, okay? And now he's doing planetary. He flew in from New Zealand for today. Is Lindawe in the room? Lindawe? Lindawe flew here from South Africa. I think she's actually given her TED Talk. Also, if you go to TED.com today, one of the talks that TEDx Boston produced is on the homepage. So probably in a month, that's going to get 1 million views. And I'm thinking some of the talks that are going on over there, I've heard a bunch of them, they're great, are going to go viral, and you guys can help with that. Keep tweeting and Instagramming. This is not chronological, it's kind of random, but get the word out there. We're really proud of this community. We have 150 Imaginators here today, and the next two, I just want to say, it means a lot to me that they're making the time to be here. We have Linda Henry, that is one of the crown jewels of civic leadership in Boston, and she took on running the Boston Globe. And at a time when I think we need more editorial than ever before, and yet the business model is really a challenge for media, and partly it's the architecture of the internet that's changed everything. She's navigated the Boston Globe to not only be more relevant than ever before, be more a business savvy that has helped it thrive in these unique times. And she has agreed to interview one of the three kind of partners in this event, the CEO of Forbes, who's made this a priority. He's put on his calendar October 6th and January 17th, so he's eligible for the Chia Pet. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEOs with the most are going to talk about Web3. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Federle and Linda Henry.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, and a special thank you to John Warner for convening this. This is extraordinary. The community here is really wonderful, and it's exciting to see it grow. So, hi, how are you?
Linda, it's so good to see you.
So my first question
I got a Chia Pet. How about you?
I was going to say, my first question is, where are you going to put your Chia Pet?
Oh, well, I'm sure my wife won't let me put it in too many places in the house, but I'll put it in my office somewhere nice.
That's wonderful. So we're here today, and we're diving deeply into a number of topics. The first one, and I know that you talked about this earlier today, but how do you define Web3?
Yeah, no, I've been asking everyone today, give me a definition of Web3, and I've heard 30 different definitions. So that was the point. The way I define Web3 would be really around this decentralization notion. So, and that, I think in its simplest terms, is decoupling it from server farms, that it becomes more of a peer-to-peer network that is, again, decentralized from the controlling influences of, a couple of mega companies.
So isn't that is that a fundamental opportunity or threat or both to an institution like Forbes, where you are sort of that overlay and you've been providing that platform for journalists to reach audiences?
No, I don't see it. I don't see any downside to that. I actually see upside in every change or innovation that goes on. Always drives a lot of new advertising, as you know, because there's a whole new slew of companies and marketers who are trying to get their message heard. As far as how we look at what we do at Forbes in terms of creating content and journalism and distributing that content, that's the change and the threat, right? And that's what happened with a lot of legacy media in terms of, if you stuck with a print distribution, you quickly found yourself behind, whereas it's a constant game of how do you keep up with the new technology. The basics of media, though, have not changed, even for 100 years. It's always been about create great content, attract an audience that you then monetize, either through subscriptions and or advertising. And that remains the same to this day in terms of how we monetize our businesses. Now, we've also got additional products and licensing and all that, but the basics of media have really not changed.
The fundamentals of journalism is what you're talking about. The fundamentals of what journalism is and the role that it plays.
I'm not talking about journalism, I'm talking about business models at this point. Now, journalism, the fundamentals of journalism, I don't think have changed either, in the sense of if you define the fundamentals of journalism to seek the truth. That's not always everyone's idea of journalism. But yeah, I was talking more about the business model itself.
And so what should media companies that are embracing and have your really exciting attitude of change being an opportunity as opposed to something to resist, which a lot of media companies were behind the curve for Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. So how should media companies now be looking at this new era?
Yeah, well, I think, look, I've been in the business for 35 years, and people say, oh my God, how do you stay interested and engaged in that? And it's because it's constantly changing. And long before the internet, there were challenges and changes coming every day. And that will continue. And Web3 will pose a whole new set of opportunities and challenges. And the key is to have that mindset of being engaged and curious and willing to really experiment with the ways that you're doing business, and being willing to fail or succeed in different areas.
I think that's one of the things that in your 10 years leading Forbes is that you've been really embracing this entrepreneurial attitude. You call yourself a 100-year-old startup. At the Globe, we're a 150-year-old startup. In that same idea that time is the greatest of all innovators, and that you're going to have to keep changing and evolving, and that within media, it is, even though the fundamentals are the same, the world around you is changing, and finding ways to connect your journalism, our journalism, to audiences and have it be relevant keeps evolving in exciting ways. And so in this audience here, one of the things that I hear is, we need you to cover this more. We need you to tell the story of what's going on. You talk to normies. How are you telling normies about what this world is, or what this revolution, what this evolution is?
Yeah, so that's where I think Forbes has really created a huge opportunity for itself, because our journalists, I see Michael over there, and I know Matt is somewhere here in the audience. There he is, right there in the audience. Forbes started covering crypto back in 2012, and it was a great story, but in 2012 we started covering it, and to me, what Forbes has done very well editorially and journalistically is we talk to the crypto committed, which is probably the smallest group, right? These are the people who jumped right in. They're part of the 5 million people who follow, CZ or Sam Bankman. And so we have the crypto committed. We have the crypto curious, which I think is a very big group, and that's some people in here, although this group may lean a little bit more towards the crypto committed. And then you have really the great unwashed of, the large group of people who are, basically the crypto uninitiated. And that's the vast majority of the world at this point, and a huge opportunity. Forbes can bridge all three of those groups. And it's what has made Forbes attractive, actually, to players in Web3 and crypto, because they see us as a mainstream media, telling the stories of crypto and telling the stories and helping the whole industry emerge on a legitimate basis of, hey, if Forbes is covering it, this is a real deal. And so I think as more and more mainstream media engage in that, you're going to see kind of all boats rise in terms of adoption.
I think that your Forbes has definitely walked the walk, and I remember an article, and I think it was, I don't know if it was 2013, where you sent a journalist to go and live on the blockchain, and I think she bought 12 Bitcoin, and her job was to live off of that for a week.
Yeah, so that was one of our early forays. And again, the editors gave Kashmir Hill, who's now at the Wall Street Journal, she, at the time, we gave her 12 Bitcoin in 2012. I don't know what the price was then, Michael, but you might recall, but it was low. And so she tried to live for a week on crypto alone, and she was only able to buy pizza. So she made the determination she was not going to be able to live for a week. And so that was the end of the experiment. And a few years later, as crypto started doing it, as Bitcoin started to do its rip-roaring rise, and I think it was in the $40,000 or $50,000 range, she let us know that, hey guys, I never used the rest of those Bitcoin, they're somewhere. And we went, I said to my CFO, I said, look, if we find these, we'll do an executive offsite in Hawaii. And so we actually did go searching for them, talked to Coinbase and others on how we could recover it, and we were unable to find it. So somewhere are about 9, 10, maybe 11 Bitcoin that have been scraped elsewhere because we didn't get to go to Hawaii. So.
It's a great story and a good reminder of how far it has come in the years that you've been covering it. One of the things that we also see, so on that line of mainstream media like the Globe and Forbes covering more of this, what story arcs do you think are not yet or could be told more? What story arcs are you hearing from today, from this room, from people that you think more people should be hearing?
Well, all these stories, I think back to when the internet was coming on, you always begin with kind of the crazy fringe, right? Who are the people doing these crazy things that most of the world's not paying attention to? And, we were in that period for a few years on blockchain and crypto, and now more on Web3 and metaverse. It all sounds like the crazy fringe until you begin to start seeing, enterprise adoption of it, and you start seeing enterprise applications of it. And you start, with crypto, you started to see, the banks that just a year earlier were saying, that, this is a Ponzi scheme. The next year they're making big investments and putting it in their high net worth portfolios and everything else. So we covered, that's part of it, is we tell the stories as they emerge so people can see that arc and that development of a new industry. And that is what we are focused on, meaning telling the stories that give people the information and the connections to the people who are making those changes. So it's not unlike a conference. We just do it on a daily basis through our storytelling, but it's a conference in the sense that we point out the people doing very interesting things and innovative things, so then you can connect with them and people can collaborate and then get together and produce what is going to be the next change.
So based on what you've seen with other sort of cycles, and you talked about how it starts on the fringe and it sort of grows and you see it more, where in the cycle do you see where we are right now?
I don't see it as a cycle like that. I see it as a continuum and cliffs, and continuum and cliffs. But it always does go like this eventually. It's like we all like to think about our portfolios, right? They go up and down, but they always go up eventually. And I see that about technology is there's always, something new coming down the pike, and what is that going to be, a disruptive change or just an incremental change or no change at all? And, I was having a conversation with, as John has pointed out, the original engineer at Twitter. And it's, the notion of a text message. Why did Twitter emerge as the leader in that when there were 50 text messaging apps and various technologies? But it was a convergence of people and place and time and all sorts of things go into it. And I'm sure we were writing about Twitter and others at those very early stages. And so to me, it's, when you talk about what's going to happen next year, you never can tell the future of what's really going to happen and who are going to be the sure winners and who are not. That's what you try to pick the winners now. You make investments in them, whether you're a VC or you make investments in any startup here that you think is going to succeed. We tell the stories of those, and we try to pick winners in our under 30s. But in the end, we'll see where it all goes.
So you brought up Twitter. How would you compare the sort of .com explosion, the Web 1, Web 2 sort of revolution that changed so much of the business world and our personal worlds? How would you compare the success of the entrepreneurs there to the success of the Web3 entrepreneurs?
Well, the Web3 entrepreneurs in the crypto space got to be billionaires a lot faster. And that is one of the differences, kind of the acceleration of how quickly, crypto and now Web3 is coming on. And it's been interesting here at this conference to hear so many people talk about, oh, we're doing this on Web3. And I'm like, oh, really? You're on Web3 now, and what are you doing, and what exactly, how are you defining that? So I think the pace of the change and people's sense of understanding kind of the development and evolution of technology, people are much more comfortable with it than they were back in '95 when the web really hit that tipping point, the internet hit that tipping point where everyone had to have brochureware on the web, and the kind of the crazy fringe was fading out, and every corporation and enterprise was coming in. And we're somewhere in that right now, I think, with Web3 and NFTs, that goes for the metaverse, NFTs, Web3, kind of the whole umbrella, as we call digital assets at Forbes.
And what are you doing within the metaverse?
So I look at our investments, and we're doing a couple things. So the metaverse, we're building out. We're in Sandbox, and we're building out a community there. You could see a really natural progression for a media company like Forbes, who our mission is to educate, inspire, and provide connections for people to be successful. So in the metaverse, we can do that in the form of, should it be the form of a university campus, Forbes Successville or something, or should it be a conference like this where we're inviting you in to hear interesting speakers and their avatars? And our property in Sandbox happens to be right next door to Snoop Dogg's. And Snoop Dogg has built a very big Snoop's crib. And when they were selling us this real estate, and I'm not sure if we're getting sold a piece of real estate or not, but when they sold us this real estate, they said, if nothing else, you'll get a contact high off of, being next to Snoop. So the way I look at that, I gave my development team and tech team some money to do this, and I look at it as R&D. It is not a business plan to make zillions of dollars or anything like that, but it'll certainly lead to teaching and understanding and getting a sense of what we can and can't do, or more importantly, how our audiences or new audiences will engage with us. And the key is that willingness to give that a try. When publishing on the blockchain, which was a big subject that I was always asked about, so what are you doing about publishing on the blockchain? I think we go back at least 5 or 6 years where we did an experiment with Civil. I don't know if everyone remembers the Civil coin and publishing on Civil. It quickly went like that. But again, we're very proud to be willing to experiment on it, and it was a whole notion of incentivizing your audiences with tokens and incenting our writers to write on the blockchain. And so we've experimented with a couple, the Publics, which is an Eastern European group that we did some experiments with. So we learned from it. They didn't succeed, and we didn't succeed on it. And I think publishing on the blockchain as a mainstream publisher, creating large audiences and following them is still a little ways off, because it really requires a major behavioral change in how people currently interact with media, and the whole idea of incenting them to do certain behaviors. That makes perfect sense and should work, but again, it's kind of an evolutionary or behavioral change that'll happen.
I think for companies that are even outside of media, what you're talking about in terms of looking at these, sort of keep trying out what the new technologies are, which we do the same thing at the Globe, where it's art. You just have to keep trying. A lot of them are, some of them are going to pick up, and some of them won't. But it's creating that culture of embracing new technology and learning. And we put together a team that's just a Web3 team, and we're learning, we're trying. We set up a helium mining, just not as a major, just to make sure that we understood and that we were engaged in what was going on. So I think that it's exciting what Forbes is doing as well, and I think it really translates outside of just media organizations that need to stay in touch with the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the key to Forbes, going back 10 years to our success was, the beginning of our success was around a bet the ranch strategy. Intellectually, everyone in the media world knew they had to change with, towards a digital future. Emotionally, they couldn't get there, though, a lot of companies. I worked for many years at Time Inc., which is incomprehensible that Time Inc., one of the top media companies of the 20th century, no longer exists. And Forbes, on the other hand, when I was asked to come over to Forbes, I kind of said, why the hell would I want to go into the business media again? I've been there, I've kind of done that. And I know how difficult it is right now. And at the time they said, well, come on over and see what we're doing. And they were really taking a bet the ranch strategy, which totally rethought the newsroom and how we created content and journalism. And it was a creation of a contributor network. It was a creation of new products that brought marketers into publishing and creating content. And at the time, a lot of people in the industry threw rotten tomatoes at us and said, you're ruining journalism, you're ruining a great brand. And it took about a year and a half or so for syndicated research to catch up with us. And it began to show how, all systems were go at Forbes. I mean, our audience, our engagement, all metrics of the business were fantastic. And I probably spent 40% of my time in 2013 talking to groups from around the world who came and said, what's the secret sauce? What are you doing that is allowing you guys to be successful when so many people in your category are really in decline? And that, to me, set off, that whole period there really re-energized an organization into taking big risks and bet the ranch sort of changes. That there were some people in the organization who didn't want to be part of it, and they left. But it was that kind of jump-starting an organization into a new mindset. And by 2013, we were no longer a print company. We were more digital than print. And today, we're about 7% print. And I don't take great pride in saying that. I take great pride, though, in that we're a great media company creating great journalism still, and distributing it in the ways that readers and our audiences want to receive it.
I think the media companies like Forbes and like the Boston Globe that are thriving today are the ones who went through hell about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, to be really set up and to be in this position of strength to embrace the change of today, which a lot of smaller media organizations have not been successful doing. But what I will say is that Time Magazine has been one of the leaders in the NFT world. I think they're spending about 30% of their time talking to other media companies about how they've been so successful with their NFTs and how they've sort of really pushed forward and really created community around their art and their covers and been building that out.
Yeah, no, and you have to, I mean, it's no surprise with Benioff owning Time that they'd be doing innovative things, right? And that was the spark that Time needed, the same way we had that kind of come to Jesus moment 10 years ago where we were looking into the abyss that the whole company could fail if we didn't do something very different. And on the NFT front, though, you know, that too is another area where we were very early on. One of the first NFTs for magazines. We created a cover with the Winklevoss twins on it and digitized the cover, put it up for auction, and it got $333,000, which we were all kind of, wow, there might be something here on this one. And we donated it immediately to a journalist fund of protection of journalists around the world. But we have since experimented with NFTs. We've created a virtual billionaires NFT series. So these are made-up personalities of billionaires, but with real portfolios on the New York Stock Exchange. And we put them up for sale. You can then track your portfolios on them and compete who's got the best portfolio. And it was part of our, and then any exchanges or anyone who's selling one of these avatar or these characters that we have, we're scraping 10% off of, again, any additional sales there. So again, this was an experimentation, R&D on our part, but it was a nice kind of jumping off point of, or combination of Web 2 and Web 3, where in the Web 2 world, we have our real billionaires and we have a page for them. In Web 3, we have these virtual billionaires who are on our site as well. You can go in and take a look at them as though they're real billionaires around the world. People own these NFTs and trade the NFTs like playing cards on billionaires. So that kind of experimentation and what Time was doing with, is it called Time Snaps or something like that, timeline on artwork, you know, you got to applaud those who make the effort to try to stay ahead of the game.
So we're running out of time. This has really been a great conversation. Do you have any last message for people in this room on what they should be thinking about going forward?
You know, when I get this question, I always say stay curious, right? It's the only way to stay engaged too. As I said, I've been at this 35 years. If I didn't stay curious, I'd be dead. And I think that applies whether you're talking to kindergartners or PhDs at MIT, is stay curious, because that's where windows open and, you know, you do interesting things or you think big thoughts and you can imagine possibilities. So that would be the message, whether I was talking to a kindergarten class or MIT.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Linda, thank you.
And I've just been looking through it, and there's nothing about Web3. All right, who liked these two? I subscribe to both their work. You guys gotta subscribe to and watch their leadership. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, so Charles Draper, his middle name was Stark, and Tony Stark was named after Charles Draper, and the Draper Lab is the lab that created the guidance system to land on the moon. And I was talking to the number 2 guy at admissions at MIT. I said, you know, why do you think MIT has just like had a renaissance? And he said, Tony Stark, because the movies kind of depicted it. I would argue that some of what Ben has written has changed the career path of many. And he's irreverent and hilarious, and he's quite a talent, and I'm proud that he's local, and he has his entourage. Here, do you want to wave, kids? He has his kids here. So thanks for coming, Mesrix.